first of all, Dark Souls 2 is such a highly anticipated game.
Thank you.
Are you thrilled that it's gonna release soon?
I am, actually. I'm really looking forward to how fans will accept Dark Souls 2 from Dark Souls 1. I feel the pressure, but the excitement is obviously there.
It's great to read in such places as Reddit, etc., from people who how they address to Dark Souls 1. I just read the other day an article from a guy who had a depression.
Okay.
And then he digged so much into Dark Souls 1 as an environment which is your enemy, but you can control it. You can overcome your obstacles.
Right.
And not just in the real world where he felt powerless, but in Dark Souls it was equally hard, but you can actually do something against it. And it's interesting to see what people project into a game.
Sure.
So another guy who's thrilled to have Dark Souls 2 there.
Great. I'll look for that article.
Yeah, it's going to come in March 14th.
March 14th.
Do you release the PC version in the same amount of time?
The PC version will come a little bit after, but we're hoping to release it as soon as possible. The reason why we're a little bit delayed with the PC version is the PC version for Dark Souls 1 was more of a port. But now for Dark Souls 2, the game itself is being developed on the PC, but we want to make sure that we include sort of the PC unique features, such as key mapping or such as high resolutions, using the mouse and stuff like that. So this is actually our second PC title.
Okay.
So we are lacking a little bit of experience, but we want to make sure we take the time to make sure we implement the features that the PC game requires. And so that's the main reason for the little bit of delay. But we will hopefully release the PC version shortly after.
Yeah, I looked it up. Amazon, I think, pointed out May. Do you think that's really? Yeah.
I hope earlier than that.
Okay.
May seems to be far away.
Yeah, but, I thought so too.
Yeah, so we are working, full steam ahead to get the PC version out, and right now I can tell you as early as possible. But in terms of the release date, I think we will be able to announce hopefully next month or a little bit later. Yeah.
Okay. There was kind of mixed feedback in the PC version in terms of I don't know, the cursor who's always shown resolution problems, as you already mentioned it. So you picked up that feedback and you're trying to make a change there.
Yeah, we are trying to listen to as much user feedback as possible. Dark Souls 1, somebody was generous enough to create a mod for us.
Yeah.
But hopefully we can do that ourselves this time.
Okay. Yeah, great thing with PC version there. So the whole modding.
Yeah, I guess both good and bad. I guess.
Yeah. Given Dark Souls 2 is going to be a success.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Can you imagine to bring it to the next gen? Afterwards?
That's a good question. Right now we don't have any plans. Our initial intent was to make sure we get Dark Souls 2 as fast as possible to the fans. So we immediately started developing on the PC and for the PS3 and Xbox 360. But obviously next-gen consoles are doing very well. They're great machines, I think. I think they have a lot of potential. Again, I think this might depend on user feedback, fan feedback, as well as the market as well.
Are you, as a producer, does it surprise you when Sony says, by the way, we're going to have PlayStation 4 in the end of the year, so you say, okay, we have a half-finished game now, we can adapt it now? Is that
for me, it wasn't that much of a surprise. I think we were really focused on, we were aware of how much potential the current gen consoles still had. I think there was a lot of things that we were still capable of being able to do with PS3 and Xbox 360. So, it was a surprise about the next gen, no doubt, but it didn't shock me at all. I think we were focused enough on the current gens to not really let it disturb our development, I think.
Okay.
So, hopefully.
What do you think of petitions from Wii U users who say, we want Dark Souls 2 so bad?
That's a tough question. We haven't looked into that very much yet. I think it's a great platform, I think, but I think
it's another audience.
It is another audience, I think, and I think we're still focused on current gen PS3 and Xbox 360 and the PC at this point.
Yeah.
So I think we'll stick with our plans for now.
Yeah. You already mentioned it a little before, but everybody wanted to ask you one thing in the community. I made a poll there. Is Dark Souls 2 gonna be any easier?
Probably not. Probably not. Yeah, I can guarantee it's not gonna be easier for sure.
And there isn't gonna be an easy mode or something like that?
There won't be. The difficulty is not from how complicated the controls are. It's not from how fast your reflexes are. I think it's just from how much you can learn from your mistakes. So in that sense, the difficulty is going to be the same for experienced players as well as casual players. I think it's a very challenging game, but hopefully not a frustrating one. I think it's a satisfying one where you can take step by step. And so we want to keep that level of difficulty high, so that players do sense the high sense of achievement when they're able to overcome. So I think making the game easier is not a very good solution for anything. So I can guarantee the game will be more or just as or more difficult, I guess, than Dark Souls 1.
What I liked in Dark Souls 1 is the fact that you have so much to discover. Not only items, but I want to call it story secrets. Little pieces of puzzles you can put together. It's rewarding for me, and for the community who loves Dark Souls also. But I think you lock out many players who doesn't have the will or the desire to see into the story, and I think sometimes it's a shame for the guys at your company who work out the story that so many of the players didn't see it.
I see.
What do you think of that?
Well, the story actually comes from the dev team as well. We talk about the story lots, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who don't understand the full story behind it.
I guarantee you that.
Which is fine. I think our intention was for players to sort of create their own story. And for Dark Souls 1, you look on the internet and there's so many different takes on the story, and I think that's what we were trying to achieve. Is we want players to take on their certain role within the world itself and sort of piece together the different puzzle pieces and create their own story. And as long as players try to do that, I think that's what is most important for us as developers and publishers. But it's also great to see that the fans are so into the game that they'll write their own stories on the internet, and you'll see them all over the place. And more casual players who want to know the story, but maybe don't have the time to play the whole game, or it's difficult for them to piece together different information. I think the fans are great. The community is great for sharing their own ideas. So I think that's the core that underlines sort of the lore of the game. Is we've put the materials there. I think it's up to the players to be able to decide how they want to cook up the materials.
Yeah, I think it's daring to make a game like that in times like these.
Sure, I think so. But at the same time, I think that's where Dark Souls 2 is a game that doesn't really have a true ending, I guess. You can play the game for so long and you can get so deep into the world without even having to go to the end necessarily. And I hope that's one of the encouraging factors that players keep playing this game. We have to lose connections with other players in the world, which is another important thing, so that players can role play and have a new experience every time they play. The exploration is something very important. The RPG element is very important, and hopefully players will play it in many different ways, I guess, for them to see a different side of the game every day.
When the Souls series was created, did you already see that in pop culture it's going to become the hardest game If you there's a quote from somebody on the internet, I don't remember who said Skyrim is your loving father who don't caress you, and Dark Souls is your drunk uncle who pushes you into a lake, and even he comes back and sees if you still can swim. Could you see that it's gonna be this way? Was that your intention?
I don't think anybody could have really anticipated it.
Yeah. Because it's kind of a corner you are pushed into now. You know, everybody asks you, "Is it gonna be easy?"
Right.
Again.
Right.
You have no choice but to make it hard now.
That's true. I think, but the way From Software develops any of their games is in the way that they've developed Dark Souls. You know, Kingsfield was like that, Demon's Souls was like that, Dark Souls is like that, Dark Souls 2 will be like that. It's they're a developer that don't like to really spoon feed everything to the players.
Yeah.
You know, figure it out, you know, explore, try your own tactics, you know. It's up to you to be able to overcome the barriers. And I think from the development side, the game's not impossible. We're not going to make an impossible game.
Yeah.
It's just up to you to be able to be courageous enough and patient enough to try and get over it. And I know a lot of fans and a lot of people say this is, you know, we're going against the trend of, you know, casual gaming. But I think it's more, you know, this is the game that we have delivered. It's up to you whether or not you want to tackle it. And we're very we're happy to see that there's a lot of people that are willing to take the challenge. And so, I think we're comfortable in the position that we are now, and I think we'll continue to deliver something as challenging as it is.
How do you in person like to tackle the bosses? Because it's for me it's more rewarding in single player. You know, I have my favorite boss in Dark Souls 1 was the Grey Wolf. Sith.
Okay, yeah, Sith, yeah.
I conquered the son of a bitch. It really took my time. But then I saw a colleague of mine playing, and he summoned 2 other guys who just made him flat in no time. And I thought, oh, that's a pity for you right there.
I'm more similar to how you play the game in that I like to challenge and I like to take the time, and I like to deliver damage bit by bit and finally be able to overcome. I think that's where the satisfaction comes from.
I think so too. Yeah.
But there are bosses that are sometimes too difficult for me to do that, and so you summon other players that give you a hand. And that's satisfying as well. But when I do that, I sometimes feel, okay, next time I'm going to try it.
Yeah, I sometimes feel like cheating. You know? Somebody does all the work and I'm just
in the corner,
covering behind my shield.
Right. So, but then hopefully, you know, when you get somebody to help you, somebody else will summon you later on, and you can help them. So, I think there's plus sides of both, and I think it's a gameplay style. I like to try and challenge by myself, though.
Yeah, I think it's a great culture which developed in PvP also with the all bowing before it starts and everything. It's great.
Last question, please.
Okay. Okay. Last question. In terms of level design, sometimes I thought it was a level of difficulty that you maybe didn't want when there's a really narrow path and my character does a whole turn. And I just fall down and I say, oh, come on. Is it intentionally that levels are sometimes an enemy also? Or is it, does it come with making a great game, a big game that you have not everything polished the way you want it?
No, I think it is part of the level design. There are some areas where the dev team is a little bit mean sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the ways that we try to balance the different difficulties in the game. We don't want to make the difficulty just with how the enemies are or just with certain traps. I think we want to put enough variation so that you're always facing a different challenge every time.
Okay. So. All right.
Cool.
Great talking to you.
Hopefully you'll have time to play it again. Try it again.
Yeah, I will.